Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. A rally was held in Kensington Market today in hopes of saving a local supervised consumption site, one of 5 in the city slated to be shut down by the province next spring. But while advocates and clients are adamant that the services help save lives, not everyone is convinced that the sites are working. Dale Manukduk reports.
We save lives! We save lives!
Hundreds gathered outside the Kensington Market overdose prevention site, calling on the Ford government to reverse course on its decision to shut down 10 safe consumption sites in Ontario, including 5 in Toronto.
We've been doing this service for the last 6 years, really because the overdose crisis was growing and so many people were dying of overdoses that we wanted to learn how to support people and how to reverse overdoses, and we did.
While some in the neighborhood were originally supportive of the site, they've grown tired of other elements that come along with harm reduction.
It's scary going out alone. I want to see them get better, but this doesn't seem to be working.
Beating each other up, going to the hospital, ambulances every day. Whoever thought that giving people drugs and sending them down a fast path to hell was better than rehabilitation did not think that through at all. It's been an absolute nightmare.
It's the worst thing that could ever happen to a community.
The province announced the closure nearly 2 months ago, citing rising crime around the sites. The decision came nearly a year after Caroline Huebner-Macarat was killed, caught in the crossfire of a daytime shootout outside of a Leslieville safe consumption site. For years, residents around there had raised concerns about increased crime and discarded drug paraphernalia near schools.
Discarded needles would be the least of our problems because we will have discarded bodies everywhere.
Friday's rally comes one day after 2 people were stabbed to death in Kingston, just outside of a safe consumption site there, where there's also a homeless encampment.
There have been assaults, human trafficking, people that have been severely injured by fires. There's been so much that's happened, and I think that honestly yesterday, just seeing the lives that have been lost and seeing what had happened, it was really a final straw. Like, enough is enough.
In a statement, a spokesperson for the Ministry of Health says communities, parents and families across Ontario have made it clear that the presence of drug consumption sites are leading to serious safety problems. We agree. That's why our government is taking action to protect the public.
It has given me the best 6 years of my life.
But advocates and the clients who use the services aren't backing down.
Thankfully, I was here when both times happened. I did overdose. A little bit emotional yet. I'm really grateful for them that, that they did save me.
The 10 Ontario sites are scheduled to close by March 2025. The province says it won't approve any more harm reduction services and is investing $378 million into addiction treatment hubs. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
An 18-year-old man was rushed to hospital with serious injuries, and residents of a North York apartment building are concerned for their safety tonight after a brazen shooting last night. The front doors were riddled with bullets and shattered glass was scattered around the main entrance of this building on Chalk Farm Drive in the Jane and Wilson area. Families taking their children to school this morning had to make their way around the debris as police recovered shell casings and other evidence.
I have grandkids, I know. They're young. And I want them to come up in a decent way, not in an environment like this. What they do here last night is shock everybody. People come from work, have to sit down outside, can't go in the building.
The teenage victim suffered serious but non-life-threatening injuries. Police say they do not have any suspect information at this time, but they are looking for a light-colored vehicle which was seen fleeing the area. The case of a man accused of planning a terror attack against a Jewish center in New York City went before a judge in Montreal today. The suspect, who was arrested in Quebec after traveling from his home in Toronto, is facing extradition to the United States. Alison Northcott has the latest.
The arrest in Ormstown, Quebec, near the U.S. border, was carried out by the RCMP following intelligence from an FBI investigation. U.S. justice officials allege 20-year-old Muhammad Shahzaib Khan was planning to enter the U.S. and carry out a deadly mass shooting targeting Jewish people in New York.
What is his reaction to these charges against him? What does he make of this?
It was a surprise first.
Khan himself did not appear in court, but his defense lawyer says he and his client are still waiting for evidence from the U.S. as it seeks to have Khan extradited.
He was arrested last week, our guy, and then they have 60 days to produce the proof that the United States have.
Khan came to Canada on a student visa in May of 2023. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says his arrest prevented potentially devastating situations.
All of us are confronting similar threats of violent extremism and radicalism that requires us to be vigilant. We are constantly making sure that our security services and intelligence agencies are keeping Canadians safe.
U.S. officials allege Khan, a Pakistani citizen living in the Toronto area, started showing support for ISIS online and on encrypted messaging apps last November.
ISIS is not gone. ISIS is still an organization. While they may no longer have the territory that they had claimed as theirs in Iraq and Syria, what this shows is that the threat continues.
As part of the extradition process, the U.S. will weigh what evidence to share, says this former U.S. counterterrorism official.
What are they willing to disclose publicly, both to Canada and then again into a U.S. Open court process to reveal these government insights and again, prove to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Khan is guilty of that crime of material support to ISIS.
Khan's next court hearing is scheduled for December 6. He's expected to appear by video conference from jail. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Anxious times for some air travelers. Air Canada flights could be grounded as early as Sunday. The airline and the union representing over 5,000 of its pilots remain at the bargaining table tonight with just a couple days to go until the strike deadline. And as Ali Chiasson reports, the government says it doesn't plan on stepping in.
The strike hasn't even happened yet, and already Air Canada passengers are being affected.
Actually, we were supposed to fly on Sunday. But then I think, 2 days ago, we already received an email saying, if we want to choose to change our flights just to avoid the risk of, missing out the flight. So then we actually get to change it for free. And we switch it from Sunday to Friday. It is a bit stressful. We have to all get approvals from managers, to take an extra day off and then just scrambling around because we thought we have extra 2 days for packing and whatnot. So we're just, pretty much I think my wife didn't sleep the whole night just for packing.
We had a flight booked for the 18th, and then we had to change it to the 16th, and we found out the planes would be abandoned. So they brought it down to the 15th, and now we booked for the 13th.
It's just booking, getting new hotel arrangements. It's a bit taxing.
Air Canada says in anticipation of the pilot strike, they've stopped accepting certain cargo, including live animals and perishables.
I don't understand why it waits to the last moment. They should just think about what to do to the rest of the economy.
If the strike happens, it could disrupt 110,000 people every day.
It's Air Canada. They can be shut down for too long.
The pilots' union is standing firm in their demands for a wage increase, and the airline isn't giving them any runway, saying they're being, quote, unreasonable. And their call for the government to step in was received like this.
I know every time there's a strike, people say, get the government to come in and fix it. We're not going to do that. We believe in collective bargaining, and we're going to keep pushing people to do it. Yes, we have and we will protect the Canadian economy. But first and foremost is putting all the pressure on the people who need to feel that pressure, unions and the employers.
Sunday is the day to watch. It's the deadline for the union to strike or the airline to lock them out. If there is a job action, that starts a 72-hour period for operations to wind down. It would be a gradual grounding of flights starting Sunday and going into Monday and Tuesday until all flights are grounded Wednesday. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Mississauga.
Meantime, strike action has been averted in another labor dispute. Around 150 LIF Labs workers in the GTA and Kitchener-Waterloo have reached a tentative agreement with their employer. The Ontario Public Service Employees Union said mailroom clerks and couriers were poised to strike on the weekend if a deal couldn't be reached. The union says mail clerks handle all incoming and outgoing deliveries for the company, while couriers transport blood samples and other tests from hospitals, doctors' offices, and pharmacies to labs for testing. At the core of the dispute was job security. OPSEU said the company was pushing precarious work roles, relying on third-party agencies to fill staffing gaps. The union also wanted LIF Labs to provide wage increases to keep up with the cost of living. The city of Markham has unveiled its new e-scooter pilot program. The 2-month program is now in operation, but it comes after other cities have dealt with problems related to e-scooters. Toronto, for instance, still bans them. Chris Glover has more.
Markham is officially launching its e-scooter pilot program. It'll be 2 months, about 100 of these e-scooters. People will have to download the Scooty app in order to use it. To unlock a bike, it costs $1.15 and then 35 cents a minute after that. And they're pretty easy to use. You just kick off here like a skateboard and then pull the trigger a little bit and you can get going. The company Scooty has been in operation since 2019, a part of a couple other municipalities as well. They were part of Barrie's pilot program earlier this year, and then Brampton's last year. Here's the mayor of Markham talking about why these e-scooters are so important for Markham's transit network. I saw you kind of laughing and having a good time there. Have you ridden one of these before? And
No,
how was
this
your
is the
ride?
first time on an electrical bike, and I want to try this scooter later after you guys have left, in case there's one of those moments. But both the scooters and the bikes, it gives people of all ages the opportunity to use this technology.
As exciting as this day is for you, there have been safety concerns, especially around the e-scooters. They're currently still banned in the city of Toronto. So how are you so confident that this is going to be a safe thing for the city?
Well, I think first and foremost, that's why we're doing this demonstration. It's about using, technology. I'll say electric bikes and scooters have been around for a while, but what's interesting is that these bikes and scooters, they're actually geo-fenced. So you can't use them outside of the Markham Center area. So the mindset, I think, is a little different.
Safety is obviously the controversial piece of all of this. In Markham, the e-scooters have been capped at 20 kilometers an hour to address the safety piece. You also heard the mayor there talking about geofencing, and that means these can be disabled if they go places that they're not allowed to or not supposed to. Here's more from the company talking about how that geofencing works.
Within 5 to 6 seconds, the IoT in our vehicle detects that you're in a no riding zone, and it comes to a slow stop and it starts to beep, 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 beep. So then you will see a notification on your app that you're in a no riding zone. And 5 to 6 seconds is not a lot of time. Is enough time where you haven't gone so far, you can quickly turn back and go to a riding zone.
So Brampton is in the second year of its pilot program. Brampton says in its first year, 110,000 riders took part in their program. They called it a success, but it certainly dealt with some problems as well. They were worried about safety, just like folks here in Markham have been. And the other issue was people leaving them kind of haphazardly on private property and in places that they shouldn't have been. All people had to do was lock them up with these little locks on the side of the e-scooter. So that has now been changed in Brampton for this year and here in Markham. Instead, people will have to come to these designated mats. There will be 11 of them here in Markham that people will have to take their e-scooters to so that they're left in an appropriate place. And oftentimes they're going to be close to transit, like this bus stop that's here.
From an operational perspective, if you have scooters lying all over the place, it becomes a bit of a management problem, operational issue. But when we have vehicles at designated locations, pickup and drop-off points, not only are they organized, but it also makes it easy for our operations team to manage maintenance and things like that, rebalancing for these vehicles.
So when people drop off their e-scooter in one of these zones, these parking zones, do they need to lock them up to something in there, or do they just park and go?
If there's a bike rack available, they should lock it to that infrastructure, but if it's not available, they should leave it in a neat and orderly manner.
And all of this is a priority for the provincial government as well. In January of 2020, they launched a 5-year pilot program for e-scooters for municipalities to develop regulations and to launch these pilot programs. And for Markham, the provincial government gave $2.5 million to support its program. And of course, if all these pilots go well, then you could see these e-scooters permanently in a city near you in Ontario. Chris Glover, CBC News, Markham.
Welcome back. Newly released polling conducted by the Ontario government finds people are distrustful of fast-tracking infrastructure projects. And one of the main reasons, the Greenbelt scandal. Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redicop has more.
The Doug Ford government commissioned polling on infrastructure projects, including questions on speeding them up. Mechanisms to do that, streamlining or using ministerial zoning orders, or MZOs, were met with skepticism, largely stemming from an overall lack of trust that the government will prioritize public interests. MZOs allow the government to override municipal planning processes. Leger also did a focus group in January. Some of the comments from participants aware of what an MZO was: "I just know it was used in the Greenbelt area. Luckily, we stopped that from being a go-ahead." Another saying, "What happened with the Greenbelt completely did in any trust I had with the provincial government." One person calling the Greenbelt scandal kind of scary, you know what I mean? Happening without much consultation.
I think there's just lingering trust issues that people have because over and over again, the Premier has clearly put the interests of wealthy Ford-connected insiders ahead of the needs of everyday people.
The polling happened several months after the Premier did a 180 on opening up part of the Greenbelt to housing.
I'm very sorry. I'll be reversing the changes we made.
That was after months of public outrage and reports by two watchdogs, one finding the process biased towards certain developers, most connected to the government, set to benefit by $8.3 billion. Here's how the Premier's office responded. From new hospitals, schools, roads, and highways to housing-enabled infrastructure, we are getting it done while working with municipalities and providing them with the tools they need to build more homes faster. This is one of many issues this government is gauging people's opinions on.
The government seems to have spent the last two and a half years putting forward legislation to reverse all the mistakes they did before, like trying to open the Greenbelt for development. And I think that's the danger of governing by polls.
The two other opposition leaders also responded. Bonnie Crombie saying the Liberals will bring back a government people can trust. NDP leader Marit Stiles saying Ontarians deserve a government that will put their interests ahead of those of wealthy developers. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
It's the final weekend of TIFF. A competition from other film festivals, such as Venice, has led to fewer international premieres at the festival. But as Eli Glasner tells us, for Canadian filmmakers, it may not be such a bad thing.
TIFF, the annual avalanche of stars trekking to Toronto, including Hugh Grant, the star of the shot in Canada horror film, Heretic.
I loved being in Vancouver, and you're lucky to be Canadian.
I'm from Toronto, Canada. You can't take any of this that seriously.
And of course, there's Canadian stars. As competition with other festivals has increased, the star wattage has shifted, with the Venice Film Festival nabbing some of the glitziest world premieres.
A lot of the big premieres are now going to Venice because they want that launch for the European crowd and the international crowd. What do you have to say?
I think if you look at our lineup this year, you'll see how strong this year's festival is.
While TIFF keeps battling for big-name premieres, it's also increasingly a place for Canadian stories, with 59 titles this year, an increase of nearly 20%.
Every year, we're able to present master filmmakers who are well-known, like David Cronenberg and Guy Maddin, but we also have got up-and-comers.
What are you doing here?
Matamara, a new film starring the director of the breakout smash hit Blackberry, is part of the new generation, challenging expectations.
I think it's a good moment for Canadian film, and I think it's because there's been a string of really interesting films, new voices, new directors, and I think audiences are noticing.
So are actors. What brought actor Chloe Sevigny to the big buzz film Bonjour Tristesse? Montreal director and writer Durga Chubose.
We got on a call and I was immediately taken with her and how articulate she was, and just the way she described the movie she wanted to make. It was like I'd never heard a director speak like that about making a movie before.
And then there's directors such as Amar Walla.
My love for movies came primarily from my dad, who's like an obsessive movie buff. And we were talking the other day and it hit us that I have a feature film in the same film festival as Francis Ford Coppola. How crazy is that to say?
Not so crazy, as the Canadian contingent and interest continue to grow. Eli Glasser, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, let's go to Chris Potter with a look at the forecast. And Chris, we got a beautiful weekend ahead, and we're even going beyond that, right? It's going to continue.
Yeah, and even though we, Kelda, get into the opportunity for showers by Wednesday of next week, it's a very minimal chance if not those showers materialize. By the time we get into Thursday, Friday, and the following weekend, it still looks dry. So it's a very dry weather forecast over the next little while. And this has been the case, obviously, this past traditional work week. And temperatures have been, obviously, a little bit above normal as well. That normal daytime high is around 21 degrees. The record high for today, 30.3. We didn't hit a record, but temperatures were above normal, basically peaking anywhere from 24 in Kingston, 26 in Toronto, 26 in Windsor, and 28 in Ottawa. And it wasn't overly humid as well. So basically it felt maybe 2 to 4 degrees higher when you factored in that humidity. And in terms of the active weather, not much to point out, and that's going to be universal. We have a very strong area of high pressure in place, and it's actually over towards New England, and it stretches back into southern Ontario, and it's protecting us from active weather. And that's going to be the story through the weekend and into next week as well. So in terms of the precipitation outlook, there's not much precipitation en route in terms of the forecast across southern Ontario. We'll be clear tonight, lots of sunshine for tomorrow. Get out there and enjoy it. As we step forward through Saturday night and into Sunday, there might be a few clouds out there during the daytime hours, but that's it. As we get through Sunday night and into Monday, more of the same. We're going to hold on to high pressure. And once again, that means beautiful weather. As long as you like it dry, your forecast is holding true. I guarantee no rain will be in the forecast for the next couple of days. In terms of overnight lows, basically the mid-teens across the GTA, the upper teens across Windsor and Chatham, the mid-teens across Ottawa, and daytime highs will once again be in basically the mid to upper 20s, feeling like the low 30s for the most part. So it's shaping up to be a gorgeous Saturday, which makes up for last Saturday. If you remember, and I do because I went for a walk, it was cool and it was a little on the wet side with drizzle, showers, and that was the story last Saturday. This Saturday we'll make up for it with daytime highs in the mid to upper 20s. Similar story on Sunday, 27 your high, feeling closer to 33. Monday there might be a few scattered high-level clouds, which doesn't block the sun. It's still going to be a bright, beautiful day with highs near 27. 26 for us on Tuesday. It looks like a mix of sun and cloud, and will become mostly cloudy on Wednesday with once again the chance of a few showers, but at this point it's looking less likely than likely. Kelda.
Love it. Thanks so much, Chris.
You got it.